Have you been curious about the green energy, electric vehicles, and the biofuel sector? If the answer is yes, I welcome you to the Shrey podcast, wherein we cover stories of the green entrepreneurs working in the green energy sector. In today's episode, we have a very special guest. His name is Mainak Chakraborty. GPS Renewables is currently doing projects of over 2,000 crores. In this podcast, we cover Mainak's entrepreneurship journey, how he transitioned from leading a 20 crore company to now a 2,000 crore company, the challenges he faced, and the opportunities this sector has for the aspiring entrepreneurs and the job seekers. If you're curious about the green energy, electric vehicle, and the biofuel sector, you're at the right place. I once again welcome you to the Shrey podcast, and I will see you in the episode. So how does it feel every time you come to Delhi from Bangalore and Mumbai? Do you feel the effects of climate change?
Climate change, of course, yes. I think Delhi has been the recipient of, climate change compared to many other cities. Not that Mumbai and Bangalore haven't, but Delhi में कुछ ज़्यादा ही दिखता है, right? I mean, you know it better.
Oh, we do.
Yeah.
Actually, just few days back, I was wondering office का AC क्यों नहीं काम कर रहा है?
हाँ.
And we contacted the maintenance guy and he said full capacity पे चल रहा है.
Right.
It's the weather outside.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Now, so basically, when we talk about you as a person, or rather you as an entrepreneur, how did you think of becoming an entrepreneur at the first place? Like, what made you start GPS?
Start GPS maybe came later, but on being an entrepreneur, well, right after engineering, I started with a very large Indian conglomerate, very respected one. Just that मुझे एक साल में लगा कि this is not my cup of tea. I can't probably work in a very large organization. And I come from a family where almost everyone has been, like a serviceman, so to say, right? They have been government executives or, been in the industry, etc. I come from a typical Bengali family. तो किसी ने कभी धंधा नहीं किया, कभी कोई business में कभी नहीं गया. But it's just that एक साल में लगा कि नहीं, मैं यहाँ नहीं कर सकता हूँ. Maybe there was always this, the rebel in me कि कुछ अलग करना है, कुछ, कुछ different कुछ करना है and all. Now, during this stint, I managed to spend some time with a startup in Austin. I started my career, I'm an electronics engineer, started my career in the, signal processing domain. Here, my boss was one of the early members of Apple and all. So what they were doing was super cool and all. I thought that, this is where I belong. Startups are where I belong. The first thing that I did was, and this is, I'm talking about around 2006-ish. Okay. So when I came back, फिर मैं सोचा कि let's start looking for startups in Bangalore. At the same time, this was the pre-Flipkart era, right? So there weren't that many startups around. And in fact, first generation entrepreneurs did not usually have a clue how to go about it. There were stalwarts who started companies like Flipkart, etc., right? The Bansals, etc. But for rest of us, maybe, we did not know how to go about it. So we are happy partying. And what we thought was that, कि ठीक है, instead at least कोई startup मिलता है तो join कर लेते हैं. I managed to find one such company in the same sector. My boss, had been a part of the founding team of C-Dot. They had built great products in India. So that gave me some further insights about how a startup runs and all. Then I went for my MBA. So and when I went for my MBA to IIM Bangalore, my idea was that कि इसके बाद जॉब नहीं करेंगे, खुद का कुछ चालू करेंगे. So the idea was to gain some further insights. I was fortunate that I managed to bag an internship in a, so to say, a startup consulting firm. All the partners were entrepreneurs. This was in Stockholm and Barcelona. So managed to come across a lot of very interesting entrepreneurs there. उनको देख के लगा फिर I think you have to just take the plunge. ज़्यादा सोचना नहीं चाहिए. So I thought that was the main realization that I got. So while we did not have an idea, I opted out of the placements. At the same time, started looking for co-founders. Answer lied in my alma mater itself. So I teamed up with SK Sri Krishna Shankar. So he was 2 years senior to me. I knew that he had tried to start something while in the campus. And our thoughts matched and all. Idea था कि for profit करना है, पैसे बनाने हैं, but at the same time to do something with some sort of a social, environmental impact and all. So there was some alignment there, and that's how, this whole initiation started. Idea of GPS came, bit later.
Okay.
But why entrepreneurship? Yeah, it was like some of these initial experiences.
Interesting. So you mentioned that before getting into your B school, you had this idea in mind that maybe you were inclined towards entrepreneurship, is it? So why do you think it was necessary for you to go to the B school rather than just starting at that very point?
Very good question, Shrey. I mean, like, and maybe that's where my personal background comes in. As I told, I come from a नॉर्मल मिडिल क्लास बंगाली फैमिली राइट. घर पे कभी बिजनेस की बात नहीं होती थी. मे बी शायद मैं एक किसी मारवाड़ी फैमिली में होता, शायद मैंने डिनर टेबल कॉन्वर्सेशंस होते राइट. बट हमारे केस में वो दैट वाज नॉट द सिचुएशन राइट. I did not have the opportunity to even maybe sit in a घर की दुकान and learn the tricks of the trade right. I like really value those experiences, right. But so I did not have that background. So at least what I felt was that, and I had, as I mentioned, I had worked in a startup. We were trying to do various things like a lot of pro bono gigs and things like that. तो उससे लगा कि वाइल वो इंटेंट था, वो जैसे बोलते वो कीड़ा था कि खुद का कुछ करना है, बट फंडामेंटल्स का आइडिया नहीं था. सो आई थॉट दैट मे बी इट्स ओके. 2 साल, it's also always good to go back to campus and all. I don't regret that. So I had 2 years of fun in the campus also. But in the meantime, the idea was very clear ki to learn the tricks of the trade as far as possible. I am Bangalore. One great thing is about that is that they have a an entrepreneurship cell called NSR cell and things like that. So lot of well-known entrepreneurs came out of some of those courses like Carrot Lean, etc. So
Yes.
got to interact with many of them while these guys were building their own companies and all. So that was the thought process behind going to a B school. That at the same time was clear. And other point was that it was an assumption that maybe it's better to have the right pedigree, and maybe it's probably it's not right, but that's the way the world works. I think pedigree does help in many cases for opening doors and all. तो वो क्लियर था कि MBA करेंगे तो ABC से करेंगे, and I was lucky to manage to get through, even though like I've always been a backbencher and all. ज़्यादा पढ़ाई नहीं करी, but managed to get through. So to me it was then a no-brainer कि yes, get that tag, and the tag did open doors because we ended up starting a company in a totally different field. I think अगर किसी और सेक्टर से होता है, तब सेक्टर भी नहीं था, it would have been far more challenging. Not that it wasn't challenging, but it did ease up things. So that's where the MBA part came in. And not because it did not teach too much in terms of how to run a business, but it gave lot of learnings. It opened up the network, other things which were not taught in B school, that did help. So I mean, no regrets there. There's no right or wrong answer, as there are many ways to go about it. I mean, most of the best success stories, I mean, have come from college dropouts for that matter. But for someone like me who did not have any idea of a business, like that was the reason I went there, and I think I would do that again if I had to.
Interesting. So I had two takeaways from whatever you mentioned. The first thing that you mentioned was that you were a part of your ECEL of your college. In fact, I was fortunate enough to get that network of people of
Right.
my ECEL, and that played a very important role and in shaping you to maybe start a business of your own as you move forward. So is it right to say that if people are still in their figuring it out phase, like if they're still trying to figure out, it's better to go to such institutions, maybe to pursue their further studies before they can take that leap of faith of starting a business?
I would say yes, it has its own advantages and all. The downside is that you lose time. At the same time, there's always the view that better to start early. So while that aspect is there, but in that scenario, in that era, that was a very different era. Like today, starting up has become very different. You have a great ecosystem in India and all. You have a lot of people to look up to learn from, to mentor you and stuff like that, right? You have great young success stories. We did not have that many back then, right? So in that particular era, I'm talking of 2008-10.
Okay.
So at that point, when there was not much to learn from, lean on, this felt like a very reasonable option now. So again, to each his or her own. But in this particular context, I felt that that was the right option. And I mean, that applies even probably today also. Like if someone does not have an idea, I don't see any harm in that. It does help. All said and done, network effects do they do help all the time. So
So basically,
if
it was
someone has
a
an option, I think it's worth taking that option. It's better to be a dropout from a great college, but at least go to like go to college, at least have that claim. I think it does help.
It does help. It does help. Interesting. So like I've been following you for quite some time, and I'm really curious to know that what has been your proudest moment as an entrepreneur when you look back?
Which is also probably the most important milestone, is when we reached a steady state, when we crossed a certain milestone in what is Asia's largest MSW based project in the city of Indore. We had a lot of challenges there. I think when we eventually, it took us a year and a half to reach that stage where we could say that it has crossed the the rated capacity and all. It was not only a proud moment for us. I feel it was a very important milestone for the industry as such, right? I mean, the CBG industry needs success stories and all. So I think that has to be of all the lot. I think that has to be the proudest moment, because I feel it had an impact for the sector as well.
Interesting. And I think definitely I can back whatever you said, because after that project, it was not just the industry who knew that, okay, something of this magnitude is possible. It was the general public that got to know that, yes, this is doable and this is practical. So I feel definitely kudos to you and your entire team for pulling that off. It acted as an anchor. In fact, to share a funny story with you, before 2 years back, I was on the hunch of going the VC way, where I was trying to raise funds. And one of the investors told me, who was that organization who installed the Indore plant? We'll invest in them.
Okay.
There was one interesting incident that I recall. Coming to your biggest setback, what do you think was your biggest setback, and what are the major learnings from that?
Setback, I would say, maybe if I were to pick up, it would be that the first few years of building GPS renewables along with the early team, it was not easy. Like in fact, when we started, बहुत लोगों ने बोला कि ये सेक्टर में मत करो, क्या कर, friends also, many friends would ask, क्या कर रहा है, like others are raising money left, right and center, etc. in the digital spaces, e-commerce space, etc. Right? In our case, we raised our Series A after 8 years, and that was also after some time of initial piloting and etc. So वैसे देखे तो almost 9 years effectively के बाद हमने Series A raise किया था. And during this phase, there were so many months we could not draw salaries, like the promoters, founders, right? We always, the idea was to keep the company first. Goes without saying, that is the way it should be. So it was not easy for us, families, etc. Right? So that phase, not a setback, but that was a very testing, time for us and all. At the same time, like obviously, and that makes you very resilient. It makes you tough. So learnings, or like outcome, was that it maybe made us much more gritty, so to say, because many things did not work out the way we envisioned, right? For instance, Satat, as came into being a couple of years back, but it did take some time for it to reach some sort of a form which would be respected by financial institutions. Like SWM rules came into being, a few years before that and all. But many of these things, it took time for all those policies to translate into some tangible business opportunities. So that phase was a like more or less it was a very testing time. But I think again, at the looking back, जो कहते हैं कि जो होता है अच्छे के लिए होता है, maybe in a way it was good, because it made us not only gritty, it taught us the value of cash more than anything, the value of money. It made us very frugal and all. Ultimately, cash is king, cash is reality. I think those tough years formed the DNA of the firm. I mean, we have managed to as scale up pretty fast, but we have managed to stay profitable also, which not many startups in our overall generation across sectors have managed to do that. So I think those challenging years also became the breeding ground for a lot of learnings. And when I say learnings, in terms of our mental makeup, as well as learnings for how to run the company. More than anything, managing cash, understanding cash, what works, what does not work, how does the world work, and also it taught us a lot. So I would say that phase was the most challenging period, so
Challenging
to say.
one. I am really in agreement of this line that you mentioned, that cash is king, and definitely it's extremely important. Now, the B school that you come from, it is like one of the most respected institutions that we have. When there was a cash crunch like situation,
Yeah.
how do you think you were able to manage your team at that point of time? Were they also your colleagues from the same institution or equivalent institutions? If you can just give a little background.
There were a few, but there were others also. Yeah, there were a couple of them from the core team. There was a common, there were overlap. There were overlaps either, with B school or our engineering college, respective engineering colleges and all. So that did help. The other thing is that ESOPs played a role. So and I think that's a very important tool, right? I mean, it should be done well and all, obviously, right? I mean, ultimately, that can be one of the most powerful tools for retaining people and all. So I think that did help. The other thing was that, I mean, we always try to be very transparent what the situation is. I think people could also see that, always we kept the company first and all. For the longest time, even today, we are not the, for instance, we are not the highest paid people in the company. Like, we
Oh,
founders aren't the
okay.
highest paid people in the
Interesting.
company. So we still, retain that philosophy. So I think that some of these, at the end of the day, I think, as people say, one should keep things simple. So some of these simple strategies did help. Yeah, I mean, I think it was about being transparent, keeping the company first, right, and making everybody a part of the
Part of it.
problem. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I think that's a very interesting takeaway. Uh, I was very curious because 2 years back, I was trying to figure out in which direction I want to take my organization, and I finally decided I personally will not be going the VC way.
Yeah.
So, what do you think? Are you, when you look back today, would you say that you're happy with the decision of going the VC way, or maybe you could have gone it the traditional way? What's your view on that?
I mean, if I came from a very rich family, maybe I would not have done that.
Okay.
See, it has its own advantages. Again, given our context, we would do the same again. We did not do a friends and family round.
Okay.
That is something I am not very, I'm not a very big fan of. Again, my personal view, I think it's very important to raise money from people, who can be partners, and who you can look up to, right? Whom you can respect to, because you'll have to be answerable. So one thing is that we did not do a friends and family round. There were maybe few phases where, some of our friends, they, helped, etc. But like through debt and stuff like that. But otherwise, we did not do that. But as far as at the right stage, I think VC money can play a multiplier effect, and it did so in our case. In general, I think one should be have clarity on what are they raising money for, right? It's called growth capital. It should be used for growth.
Correct.
For instance, I often find a lot of people ending up using like this expensive form of money for working capital and things like that.
Okay.
So that should be avoided. So in our
Okay.
case, we were, I'd like to say that we were, one thing that we did right was, using this money for growth specifically. And again, we did it very diligently. We did very frugally. Like, we have raised in the first few years, we 2 rounds. We are closing a much larger round now. But even from our series B, we raised around 125 crores, and like most of it is still in the form of FDs and all. We have
Oh,
used that.
okay.
We have, of course, we have used them for increasing our limits and things like that. We have literally spent a very small portion of it. So, and we use that again. It was purely for the growth of company. We used it to hire good people and all. So that is where VC money can play a very important role. I think in terms of, one is, that scale up. Most important, at least in our case, it really helped us in hiring good people. So going back to your previous question, the first set of the core team came from our own institutions and a few others, right? But when we had to scale up, then we needed people with strong industry backgrounds, and you can't do that on a hand to mouth basis, right? So that is where this VC slash P money played a role. And some of our partners like Neve, SB Capital, again we would do that again because again it's a young team, it's like an extended team. We have never felt that here we have a so to say an investor sitting on our heads.
Okay.
The relationship was super comfortable. Most importantly, like Hindi mein baat hoti hai, aisa nahi ki we have to go in suits. If you were to ask me, our experience had been very good. Again, people will have all kinds of experience and all. Maybe that was also because we were also we chose the right partners, vice versa. So at least those decisions played out well for us.
And I think you mentioned that you had a very clear strategy for what you'll be using that money for. Like you mentioned that you were not using that as a working capital, rather it was being used for growth. So I think that the kind of clarity as a founder one must have, it's truly important while raising the funds. Very interesting. Let's put the spotlight on the biofuel industry. How do you think the landscape in the biofuel industry, specifically CBG, has changed in the last 5 years?
Well, as we all know, it has changed, like in a massive way for good, right? There was no industry for that matter, right? A couple of years back. Today, it's always in the news and all, as you all know, right? So yeah, I think it's at the inflection point, as you also know, it came maybe a year to 2 years back and all. And many of us have been recipients, have benefited from that. Many of us have grown with the sector. So I think as we all know, the sector has changed. I think what trigger was obviously the right policies and all, some of the iterations that happened around Satat, etc. More importantly, the entry of big players in the in the industry, that played a big role. Larger companies such as Reliance, Adani, they have come in, as we all know. On the other side, oil marketing companies, now they are forming GVs and all. As you know, we have been fortunate to form a joint venture with IOCL now.
Congratulations for that.
Thank you. Yeah. So some of these things were unthinkable. Maybe the bigger companies coming to the sector was probably still thinkable, but a startup forming a JV with a giant like ISL was probably unthinkable. So I think great things have happened. The sector has changed completely, and there's more to come, right? Many other such JVs are going to be formed, and also so I think it's just the start of a very important page in this whole industry.
Interesting. And like you mentioned that currently we are sitting at a time when probably in 2008 what solar industry was, maybe the CBG industry is right now, and we all know how solar industry progressed. Same expectations are there from the CBG industry. Having said that, if we don't talk about the rosy part of the industry, if we want to touch on the not so good part of the industry, what do you think are the not so good parts of this industry if you have to speak of just one of them?
Just one of them?
Yes.
I would say there are quite a few of them.
Start with one, the biggest one.
Biggest challenge in the not so rosy part is, the ecosystem that is required to deliver what has been envisioned and all, what everybody expects, that still does not exist today, right? What I mean by that is, the entire ecosystem of suppliers, right, from equipment suppliers to, so to say, the technology side, there are room for improvements and all, right? Lot of things have been established, but many more things are to be done and all. At the end of the day, it is not a very complicated thing that we are talking about. Just that in India, where there is a very small subsidy, it's all market driven and all. The projects have to stand on their feet, right? ROI is purely based on sale of CBG and FOM and other products, right? So there, the projects have to be executed at the right capex. At the same time, they have to run like clockwork too, right? And for that requires perfect equipments on every front, right from feeding to right down to the SLS system, the solid liquid separation system, upgradation systems and all. So does that entire ecosystem exist today? The answer is no. But we can see that evolving. I think it's a matter of time before that gets solved. But as on date, are there some gaps there? Answer is yes.
Interesting. And I think, like you rightly mentioned, that whenever something gets started, there's a lot of excitement around it.
Yeah.
A lot of people jump into it.
Yeah.
And then the wrong ones jump into it.
Yeah.
And the industry starts to collapse. And the reason I say that, because we have seen that happening in the biodiesel industry. So my father started a biodiesel
Yes.
organization, and we saw that there was a huge hype. A lot of wrong people came, and because of which the industry could not evolve ever.
Yeah.
Contrary to what ethanol is and what expectations from
In
CBG
fact, the
are.
second factor would have been, let's say there are multiple, issues there. The second are, I would say, as fly-by-night operators. But I would say, still, if there are few success stories that can undo the impact of fly-by-night operators.
Correct.
But and that's why, so to me as a optimist, I think that ecosystem is more important. And at the same time, I'm confident that it's a matter of time. As we discussed, Indore, we had seen that journey. Today, the whole question is around paddy straw, as you all know, right? Today, I mean, right from like equipments to the desired yields, are we there yet? The answer is no. But having said that, if you look at the fundamental sciences and all, many of us, not just us, our competitors, I mean, we have, put in a lot, our entire, so to say, our entire company, our future is built on that. It is not based on just, like how to put it. I mean, it is based on some fundamental assumptions, which is backed by some, scientific data or some other past experiences, some experiences from elsewhere and all. So we feel that, I feel that it's a matter of time before that gets addressed. But today, are we there? The answer is no.
Interesting. Currently, we see that there are a lot of different industries who are trying to implement CBG projects.
Yeah.
We talk about the sugar distillery industry. We talk about the dairy industry. Then we talk about the organic MSW.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of industries in itself who are trying to incorporate CBG projects in their existing supply chains.
Yeah.
Out of all these industries, which one do you think will grow the fastest?
Fastest, I think, like because of the sheer volume, agro residue based, because the quantum of feedstock out there is just massive.
We're
right?
talking about sugar industry.
No, I'm talking of paddy straw and
Paddy
other
straw.
agro
Okay.
residues, right? Because of the sheer volume and all. Because there are no constraints from a project developer's perspective. In most of the cases, the beauty of in that way of this sector in India is that there are very few obstacles. I think that way India is in a great position compared to other countries and all, right? I mean, you have to just think about a project. In some cases, yes, if you want the government benefits, yes, you have to apply, say in case of UP, etc., you have to go through UPNID and all. But at the same time, it's nothing stopping you from setting up a, let's say, paddy straw based project anywhere, provided you have done your own diligence around feedstock availability and all. You can set up in any land parcel, things like that, right? The environmental norms are not as strict as ethanol and all, as we know, right? So in terms of what can move fast, what can move the fastest, I mean, according to me, it will be paddy, provided like there are the right success stories come up. I strongly feel that that's a few months away. Just like MSW, it's just a few months away. I think all the sector needs are a few success stories. Post that, I believe that will move fastest. Apart from that, second would be obviously like press mud cake. We have such a huge thriving sugar industry, so that would be according to me the second one. MSW, given a choice, our first preference is MSW. We have been there, done that, right? It's just that how many cities in India do we have with a sizable quantum of feedstock MSW? That is limited. So the quantum of or the possible number of viable MSW projects there is limited. But otherwise, on a purely ROI basis, our preference is MSW. But in terms of what can move fastest, that's why our larger bet is on paddy. So in a way, the strategy that we are also taking as a project developer today, as you know, GPS is a technology plus EPC company, but we do have an arm called Arya, which is a project development company. So from Arya's perspective, we are feedstock agnostic. We are today incubating projects across all feedstocks, right from paddy to Napier to press mud cake to MSW.
Okay, interesting. I think this was something that I was not aware of. And although, of course, you are way more experienced than me in this particular sector, I somehow feel that because of certain advantages that the sugar industries have.
Yeah.
For example, they have a big ass balance sheet. Okay. They don't have that, most of them don't have that cash flow crunch, because of which it will be easier for the banks to provide funds for them.
Yeah.
I feel that it is easier for them to scale this faster. What's your view on that? Just want to have your
No, I would say yes and no. I mean, if there is sizable amount of PMC, definitely it's a very easy feedstock to handle, not so complicated like say MSW and paddy, right? Purely from a digestion perspective, and yes, there is always a possibility of setting up a plant right there. Feedstock can be assured, right? So those advantages are there. At the same time, how many sugar mills do we have where you can set up a standalone plant? So that, per my limited understanding, that number is limited. So at some point, and people have already started doing that clustering of projects and all. But at the same time, the moment you do clustering of projects, there other contractual issues come in. How do you put together 2 or 3 different organizations and all? But again, that is happening, it has started happening and all. Again, according to us, maybe the sweet spot for PMC is maybe 10 tons or above, at least 8 TPD in terms of CBG output, right? So 8 to 12 would be the sweet spot. So if you were to work backwards, I think the number of standalone PMC based projects that can be done in the country are limited. So that is there. For the ones one can achieve these numbers, it's a no-brainer. That is a great option.
So 8 to 12 TPD is the what you were saying is the ideal size that one should consider to set up.
Here I'm talking as a project investor. That is based on our capex, opex calculations. That is what we feel is the sweet spot.
Interesting. I was reading about GPS, how you started with the medium scale biogas plants by the name of biourja. You installed maybe more than 100 of them.
Yeah.
I really want to know the story behind scaling from a small, medium level biogas plants to a large scale biogas plants. I really am curious about that transition.
Well, so I think that was a very important inflection point, also in our journey. So when we that inflection point, or that that the quantum jump came because of the Indore project and all. At that point, we were at a very small stage, like a sub 10 CR kind of revenue stage, the previous financial year, and the ARR at that point was around 20 crores. Here we were talking about like a 80 CR project, right? So how did we do that jump? In this case, we again we went to our client and we were very so to say transparent. We told that we are not in a position to raise working capital. Simple reason being, Indian banks are fairly conservative, and I would say rightfully so, right? So just, in fact, banks won't increase your limits as based on your ARR and all. They would look at your past financials and things like that. So in a way, theoretically, it's impossible to raise working capital from say PSU bank when we are talking of such a quantum jump and all. Even NBFCs have their limitations. Not only are they expensive, but even well-known NBFCs would not do that. We were working with NBFCs such as Caspian, and they ended up becoming a equity investor in GPS as well. So we had a purchase order financing model with them as an example. But it worked beautifully. Purchase order aaya, we would inform them, share the PO, etc. And 3-4 days we would get 60% of the PO value, which could help us in execute the projects. But it was a function of the size of the company. In this particular case, this size, it outsized the company by many times, right? Okay. So here we kept it simple. In a way, we sacrificed our margins in lieu of you can say like a negative working capital project. We agreed upon, in fact, we proposed we'll do an open book model. We'll keep things absolutely transparent, and we would work with a razor thin margin, provided it would be on a negative working capital basis. In fact, a lot of people at that time, mocked, लोग हंसते थे, ये किस टाइप का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट साइन कर दिया and all. But से कोई AC रूम में बैठ के वो देख रहा होगा, उसको लग ही सकता है कि what is this? But जिसने वो पीड़ा सही है, वो वही समझ सकता है, कि there aren't too many options out there. So we, at the same time, we did not want to go to random investors as well. For us, the color of the money mattered as well. So for us, that seemed to be the cleanest way to do that. We were fortunate that our client, supported, like this particular proposal, and that is what helped us take that quantum jump. And we also, agreed upon, like, I mean, it came with a lot of like performance clauses and stuff like that. So that was a very important bet that we took, and but that played out well. That quantum, that gave us that quantum jump. And then, as entrepreneurs, our job is to make the most of every opportunity, and then go to the next stage. So that is what I think we kind of managed to do.
No wonder I lost an investor because of that. Now, having said that, have you ever thought, what if that wouldn't have gone the way it did?
Yeah.
If the tables would have turned, what would have meant for you and the organization?
So, see, I mean, on that front, we are risk takers and all. At least my view is that you go all in, right? I mean, like, for instance, personally, I don't have any other investments. I don't do angel investment, nothing. Everything that I do, it's everything about GPS. I've gone all in. I don't have any option of fail करने का option ही नहीं है. And despite our best efforts, उसके बावजूद fail कर जाता है, so be it. I mean, yeah, like, I mean, you never know. I think on that matter, I mean, at least my personal view is that not to be insecure and all. If the intent is right, if the effort has gone in well, I think, and in the last few years I've seen that if someone puts in the right effort, and despite that you fail, there will be others to back you. You never know. You cannot plan for what could be the plan B, what could be the other opportunities that may come up. But at least my view from my limited experience, and that the limited experience also tell me that that is the same thing I should do in the future also, which is go all in, and give it your best, take calculated risks, and not be insecure, right? And if despite all of this, if luck does not favor you, I mean, so be it. I mean, companies fail, right? But those learnings, someone or the other will see a value in that. That is what I feel. Thankfully, we haven't had to go down that path, but that was
the reason I asked that question is because you don't have any business background as such, in terms of you don't have come from, like you said, a Marwadi family. Rather, you come,
and both of us, me, SK, both of us, both co-founders have similar backgrounds. Yeah.
So I think that grit is something that is truly inspiring for someone young as me. Maybe I'm not that young to you, but maybe all the people who will be watching this who do not come from big ass business families.
Yeah.
Grit is something that is what we can learn from you and your co-founder. So hats off to you on that. I'm really curious to know, when you were as a co-founder and CEO, you were running a 20 CR company, versus now you have an order book of what, 2,000 crores, I believe. It's a massive jump. It's a 100x growth probably in the last 4-5 years. As a leader, how do you think you have transitioned from leading a 20 CR company versus now leading a 2,000 crore company?
I think one of the most important things is that you have to let go of certain things. You cannot, it's simply not possible to, keep track of all the things, micromanage stuff, right? There are so many battles, so simple things to focus on the war and not the smaller battles, right? And I feel the only, or the best way to do is that having a very strong next set of, colleagues, commanders, whatever you call it, the middle management, right? And give them the right ownership and all. I think that way we have been fortunate, where we were able to build a very strong set of leaders who took ownership and manage their own, manage their own divisions, etc. I think so. That was a very important change, where we had to let go of, the control of the overall org to the next set of leaders and all, who ended up managing that. So hiring played a very important role. So I mean, the transition, yes. So one was that, the whole people part of it. In fact, for the longest time, the biggest problem that we faced was money, right? पैसे नहीं होते थे किसी चीज के लिए. Today, that is not the biggest challenge. today, in fact, often many cases we have to kind of say no to lots of investors and all that, like, yes, we are done with our round, whatever, right? So now the situation different, but now, and as an it's taught in B schools also, etc. Ki at some point OBHR, that becomes people management, that becomes the biggest challenge. So in this case also, for that transition, people was the key thing, I think, and we were also fortunate to get the right set of people. I think I like to believe we also we like we did our part as promoters by again having a rewarding ESOP policy and all, so that लोगों को बोले ये मेरी कंपनी है, right? We did that. So that was one of the things. The other thing was obviously the entire cash management and all, right? I mean, the way we would look at money during the early days has changed. While that DNA of frugality remains, but the way you manage money, the way you look at money becomes different. Again, you look at the bigger picture. So that was the other part. I mean, cash management, that became a different part. And other thing was, in general, I mean, I think one of the most important thing in this whole, where a major driver is EPC's foresight, trying your best to foresee problem. We are obviously not perfect, but I think there were many things that I feel played well. We were able to foresee some of these challenges. Just to give an example, again, this transition, again, as you also know, right, Shrey, that how many experienced people does the sector have? Very few, right? We could anticipate this change. So what we did, as an example, like, again, long answer, sorry, but from a hiring perspective, we decided that at some point, let's say biogas sector से हायर नहीं करते हैं, एंड हायर करेंगे, बट like, let's go look beyond the biogas sector. So what we did was, क्योंकि गिने चुने लोग थे, right, we already managed to get some of them into GPS, but उतने लोग थे ही नहीं जिनको solid experience था, right? So we decided to start hiring from the oil and gas industry. Thought process was that fundamental strong hai, right? It's just that we have to train them on biogas. So for that reason, we started building a training module some time back. So today we have our own softwares for that. We have an online learning model which is used for training, for bringing people up to speed on biogas, stuff like this. So that was one of the things that we did, like on the hiring front, on the training side. So there were many such kind of interventions that we did, but primarily which was around people and money, around cash.
Interesting. So cash management, people management, interesting. In fact, what you were mentioning and what you were referring, you have constantly emphasized on this point that you have been fortunate enough to find the right set of investors, the right set of team members, the right set of clients.
Yeah.
And I recall a backpacking story of mine. So 5 years back, I was thrown in some random city of Europe. It was an initiative by Red Bull. I was working with them. So the task was around...
And they got you addicted.
Oh, I'm having it after quite a while. But yeah, so after 160 teams from all over the world, we were thrown in some random European cities.
Okay.
And all of us had to reach from our respective city to Amsterdam. But the catch was, our mobile phones were taken away, our cash was taken away, our credit cards, debit cards, everything was taken away.
Yeah.
And we only had to use Red Bull cans as currency to travel, survive, and reach our destination in 10 days.
Wow.
So we had to cover 4 countries. I was thrown in Madrid. We had to go to Amsterdam, covering 4 countries. The reason I shared the stories with you is because that was my biggest lesson from that particular journey.
Yeah.
That once you have started your journey, you will find great people.
Yeah.
Many of you won't believe the kind of people we met in that the entire journey.
Yeah.
There were times when people were giving us a ride. They were hosting us at their home. Yeah. So, like you mentioned, completely resonate there that once we have started our journey, and if the intent is right, we'll find the right people.
Absolutely.
Very interesting.
And you find the right people, you end up finding the right people on the client side and all. Everybody has to do their job, but again, that like that learning or that insight has only strengthened that like, as long as you're transparent, everybody has problems and all, right? But if you're transparent, agar niyat sahi hai, to you will find, it may take time, you cannot plan for that, right? And that is where I think one should not panic and all. So as long as I feel you're not panicking and you are just at it, ग्रंथों में भी कहा है वही सेम चीज, like अपने काम पे ध्यान दो, जर्नी पे ध्यान दो, right? So I think luck will find its way.
Absolutely. I'm on the same page. So I was going through your one of the speeches, rare speeches, I would say. There are not many on YouTube. I was able to find 3 or 4 at max. So in one of the speeches, you mentioned you highlighted the fact that your supply chain is around 95% of it is completely indigenized, where you're procuring everything from local vendors. Why do you insist so much on that part?
Uh, I mean, it is more so. I mean, primary reason is from a business perspective, not just say a nationalistic
Okay.
perspective. Also, obviously, while that angle is there, I mean, but the primary comes from ये धंधे की बात है. Ultimately, in EPC, one of the biggest risks that you run are cost overruns and all. How do you address that? There are a few simple principles. One is maybe execute fast, right? Procure fast and all, and procure locally, right? So that you're not exposed to currency risks and all. So and from a long term perspective, from an O&M perspective, as you can imagine, like in our industry, spares and things like that can be a make or break factor.
Correct.
Right? So like first projects, we had a fairly large portion of imported items and all, but over time that's what we realized, like say first few projects that was not possible, but that was a we worked towards that ki, kuch bhi karke, this is what we should try to do, no, more than anything from a purely business perspective.
So when you say imported, was it mostly from China or
No, mostly from Europe.
mostly from Europe?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. And I believe that you.
China उस मामले में थोड़ा Indian है तो
Acha,
yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so I was reading that you also had some, maybe you acquired one of the European companies. What's that contradiction about?
No, नहीं उसमें but I don't see a contradiction. Like I think if this is India's century, then
Okay.
Indian companies should be everywhere, right?
Okay, okay. So what was that collaboration about?
No,
And
it is
just-
that collaboration is about like we had so this is a company called Proudest, and very respected design engineering firm with a lot of experience on the MSW side and all, and we had worked together in Indore at a point when they were going through a transition. They reached out to us and we felt that great, why not, let's do that, and we were in a position to financially in a position to do that. It made a lot of sense for us because it helped us in strengthening our design and engineering team, right? That was one. The other thing is that it opens up other doors for us, right? They were anyway doing a lot of work in India, so a lot of European firms anyway, as you would be knowing now, they are the action
trying
is
to
here,
set up
right?
shops
Yeah,
in
so
India.
so it did it did help in many ways, but for us it was a it was a natural fit because we were working together, and it helped us strengthen the team, and it has opened up other further doors and all. There overall experiences have helped in strengthening many other function aspects of our design engineering work that we do.
Absolutely. I think this story will go down in books wherein you're working with an organization and you acquired it. That's very interesting. Uh, okay. If there are private entrepreneurs who
Yeah.
are, jumping to start the business, even you might be getting random calls from a lot of people that they have this bunch of money and they want to install a plant at XYZ location. So, what is your feedback to such people? Like before they jump into it, what are the few of the factors that they should consider before jumping into this industry?
Overall CBG industry.
CBG industry, like let's say there are people who say I can invest 10 crores, 20 crores, and I
Right,
want to set
yeah.
up a plant. Yeah.
Yeah, my personal opinion is that like here see uh, CBG plants, if someone has the has the bandwidth to invest in only one plant, my personal opinion, again to each his or her own, but my personal opinion is that I mean, maybe this is not the right industry for that. There are certain risks there because like all said and done, there are a lot of risk factors and all. Some of them are not in control. Feedstock is a risk. Technology, fine, let's say it gets sorted, but even leaving that aside, and which I feel will that should not be a long term issue, but feedstock offtake risks still would be there, right? And these are not things under your control and all. If someone has a platform for 10 20 more projects, then one can diversify. I mean, it like it's like one can have that comfort that ki ek plant mein thoda upar niche hua, then you're at a portfolio level, you're fine. Standalone project, that I would like I wouldn't do that. But having said that, at the same time, there are so many opportunities in this industry, right? Maybe I'll take the liberty to share the example of a very good friend also. So this is a company called Quality Biogreen, run by Tejasvi Bhargav. So so when Tejasvi also, he was planning for setting up CBG plants and all, and he will probably do that as well. But at the same time, when we had some candid conversations, our point was that you guys have a strong balance sheet, you have so much respect in that part of Haryana and all. Why don't you look at aggregation as an example? Because again, for going back to that ecosystem point, right? For the sector to grow, that entire ecosystem has to come up. I spoke about, we were talking about equipments, but beyond that, feedstock, har cheez mein, puri ecosystem chahiye. So our point to Tejasvi as a friend also was that, why don't you, look into the feedstock, business? That also could be a very interesting opportunity. So for one of our own incubated projects, so we started off with that. And today, they are, if not the largest, one of the largest, aggregators, at least in Haryana. So they are working for Reliance, Adani, IOCL, so many companies and all. So,
Interesting.
and maybe that is a question, like, in fact, you can, I don't know if you know Tejas or not. I mean, worth having a conversation with Tejas on, because, per my understanding, that has played out well. That is just one such example, right? Around every equipment, there are so many opportunities, right? So, agar 10-20 crore hain, as a businessman, my view would be there could be far better utilization in the ancillary industries and all around that. Kyunki har sub segment mein there is so much opportunity. There are so many opportunities, right?
Interesting.
Har equipment aap utha lijiye.
I think that's a very interesting perspective in what you explained. I think that makes a lot of sense. Rather than going for the setting up the ultimate thing, there are a lot of ancillary things that can be thought of. For example, like you mentioned about your friend who is supplying the feedstock, which is like the nerve of the entire industry. Then the gas dispensing aspect could be one. There are so many aspects to it. So maybe for entrepreneurs who are planning to set up their own plants, these are the options that they can also consider. So thank you so much for sharing that. Now, coming to the job market, like you also shared a couple of examples wherein you went after the oil and gas industry, hired people from there, trained them, and then they're a part of this industry. Now, because this industry is pretty new and there are no formal programs as such on this industry, what tangible skills do you feel an engineering student who is inclined towards this sector must have so that it will increase his or her chances to get a job?
So one is skills. So one is, but first, in terms of discipline, I think the beauty of the industry is that there is opportunity for all disciplines, more or less. Like the traditional disciplines, right? From mechanical to to chemical to production, everything, right? I mean, civil goes without saying. In fact, I don't know how many youngsters are aware of this. I think project managers are earning pretty well there. Like all of us have a hiring challenge there. That was not the case a couple of years back, right? So I think there are today a lot of lucrative opportunities are coming up. So one is around project management as a whole. One has to start as a with a certain discipline and all. So breaking it down, there is opportunity for for young engineers from every discipline. Then you like with any career pathway, you move on to generalist roles and all. That is where as far as skills are concerned, I mean, few pointers जो engineering में जो सब first year में सब कुछ सिखाते हैं, right? I don't know if that's still the case now, but वो seriously करना चाहिए, right? तब लगता है कि क्यों सिखाया जा रहा है सब कुछ, but it does help. Today when I look back, I mean, like it makes so much sense. So I think that is one thing that youngsters should be doing if they are still in college and if they want to build a career in this sector. If you're getting the opportunity to get a taste of every discipline of engineering, they should do that. So that is one. Other thing is that gain management skills. I mean, things like college fest itself, they are often the best way to gain management people skills, right? What better way than that, so that's the other thing that should they could be doing. Other is again on the O&M side and all. There are massive opportunities on that side, right? And it is going to be I strongly feel a very lucrative career option, especially O&M. EPC is one side. Today the industry is more about EPC. Long term it's going to be about O&M. And O&M in general is much more challenging, much more intensive, right? than the EPC
Yes,
part,
and
at least in our industry.
I think you must have got that experience when you were managing biourja,
Right.
because I personally feel that managing small scale plants are more tricky than managing large scale plants. I think
Both
I
have their own
that.
set. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, it's not easy. It has its own set of challenges.
Yes.
Absolutely, yes.
Yes, but I think you have quite an experience there,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
you are ready for that. Interesting. There are a lot of suppliers who have entered the market.
Yeah.
A lot of genuine suppliers who are trying to make their mark.
Yeah.
So, how can these suppliers work with GPS?
We are always open, like work with GPS means, I mean, we are always looking for, the right set of suppliers and all. And, in fact, as a enterprising firm, we are always looking for, doing some sort of partnerships and all. If not us, our loss would be somebody else's gain. I think, I mean, if someone is coming with a long-term view, I mean, there is a massive play for, suppliers whose intent is right, who are in for the long run. There have been challenges, as we all know, with fly-by-night operators there. But if the intent is right, I think there is a massive opportunity there. I mean, as far as we are, we are fairly active on LinkedIn. They can, I think that is one of the easiest channels to reach out to, mails, etc. In fact, of the formal channels today, I think social media is, is a better channel. So
we met there.
Yeah, I mean, at least what we do is that, I mean, often I off late get bombarded with a lot of mails now, but at least what I try to do is that if there is a relevant message, forward it to teams
right set of
on
team,
LinkedIn
yes.
itself, right?
Yeah.
So LinkedIn itself could be a very easy way to reach out.
So you are saying that you are open to buy a mine purification in some of the projects?
No, so we are see again, while we have our own upgradation systems,
Yes.
there are so many pathways, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
this is still the start of the industry, right?
Correct.
I mean, there are so we are always trying to learn. We are not emotional about the things that we have done.
Correct.
So yeah, always open.
Give us a chance sometime. Okay, so coming to the rapid fire round, where it's a more informal round. We
Sure.
have done a lot of conversations around the formal part. So this particular section, I personally like this session because it really tells a lot about a person's personality.
Okay.
So there's a psychological test behind it. Okay. So in fact, the questions that I'll be asking you, and the answers I'll be getting, I will have a fair idea of how you are as a person, which I won't reveal, of course. Okay. All right. So morning person or a night owl?
Night owl.
Beach or mountains?
Beach.
Gym or sports?
Neither.
Oh, really? So you're still a lot, very fit, huh? Books or web series?
Web series.
If not biofuels, which industry will you be in right now? What have you?
AI. Tech in general.
Tech in general.
Yeah.
Okay. One superpower you wish you had?
More hours in a day. Have longer days.
Longer days. Interesting. If not an entrepreneur, then who?
Cartoonist.
Cartoonist. You draw?
Yes.
Oh, that's interesting.
Used to. Don't have the time anymore, but I used to. Yes.
Now you do the design engineering. Is it? Okay. Super rich or super powerful?
Super powerful.
Super powerful. A geeky mind of Bill Gates or a creative mind of Steve Jobs?
Steve Jobs.
Interesting. Biogas or bioethanol?
No, biogas, of course.
Took you a while to answer that one. Okay. Electric vehicles.
Because again, I'm just to clarify on that. Again, the bet is on biofuels as a whole.
Yes.
Right. Of course, biogas, because that is what we started off with, and that was the easiest thing for us to do as a first generation entrepreneur. SF की बात सोचते कोई वो कुछ start भी नहीं कर पाते, right? I mean, छोटा SF plant नहीं बन सकता था, as an example, right?
So I think you recently signed one, right?
Yes. So now we have
again.
But so it's not, frankly, it's not such a straightforward answer.
I think this will be the best part of the podcast. Okay, electric vehicles or biofuel vehicles?
Biofuel vehicles, of course.
Yeah. Interesting. What's your idea about electric vehicle scalability in India, though? Just curious.
Again, I'm not. I don't have enough knowledge on that sector. But I feel it's India, the way it's gonna play out, it's gonna be a hybrid play. That's what I feel, due to various challenges. Not. But again, time will tell. There are challenges on the EV side and all. The overall, yeah, even the footprint part of it, if we talk about, I feel it's going to be a biofuel play. I think India could be one of those countries where biofuels could really play have a massive impact there. Obviously, all of us have to deliver. Right, the onus is all on all of us. But I think India could be one of those countries where there could be a very interesting mix.
Interesting answer. Last question of this podcast. If you had to give one advice to an 18-year-old Mainak, what will that advice be?
Maybe थोड़ी और पढ़ाई कर लेते.
क्या होता है उससे? 2000 करोड़ की कंपनी शायद मिस नहीं हो जाती. Okay, interesting. With this, we come to the end of this podcast.
Yeah.
I thank you so much for taking out time for this. You're a very busy man. I know that. You're running from cities to cities. Even now, you have a flight to catch. So thank you so much for being
Pleasure,
with us.
Yes,
Looking forward to work with you sometime.
absolutely. Same
Thank
here.
you.
Thank you.
I thank you for joining today's episode. I'm sure you got to learn a lot from this particular episode. If you are someone who's curious about the green energy, biofuel and electric vehicle sector, you are at the right place. Consider following this channel, and I assure you that the kind of stories we'll bring for you will be extremely insightful. Thank you once again, and I'll see you in the next episode.